Oh, hello. My name is Mara, and welcome to Books Like Whoa. So, the idea for this video has come to me recently because I have been in the midst of something that I've not let myself do in a very long time, and that is having a nice big ol' series binge. And what I mean by that is there have been series throughout my life where there are a lot of them. Like, we're not just talking like 3, 4, 5 books in a series. We're talking about like every series on this list has at least 10 entries in it where I just get in the mood for it and I'm just like, nom, 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 give them all to me. The one that I'm talking about right now, which is the recent binging of the In Death series by JD Robb. I have been forcing myself to take breaks because I have other things that I need to read for this channel. But honestly, if I was purely mood reading, I would have already finished this entire series because I've just been completely in the mood for this in the last, let's say, 2 months. This is a 50-book series. It is essentially a near future sci-fi police procedural with heavy romantic elements to it. And it combines everything that I really like in a series, to be totally honest. And so I've been slowly working on it for, I think probably I started roughly at the beginning of 2017-ish. So coming up on 2 years. In the last 2 months, it's really accelerated. I probably read 10 or 12 of them. And honestly, like I said, if I was purely just letting myself mood read, I would just keep charging ahead. So the 50th book in this series, and that's not even counting all of the side novellas and a couple of other things, is coming out in February. So this is a nice, big, long series. If you are looking for a fully immersive binging opportunity, I definitely recommend this one. But it made me think about other series that I've done that with, where I like just got in a mood just based on either like the time of my life, circumstances, or just like being completely compelled by the series and just like binged it straight the way through. So I thought I would give you some other recommendations of series that I have enjoyed binging on at different points in my life. And like I said, none of these series have fewer than 10 books in them, and almost, I think all of them also, in addition to those 10 books, have some like side novellas. I think the themes you're going to see here are books that I like to binge are either very heavy on mystery or very heavy on some kind of like paranormal element. There's one exception to that from when I was a kid. But with all that being said, let's get going. And I'm going to try to go roughly in chronological order of me binging. So the very first series that I ever binge read was The Babysitter's Club, and I binge read those from roughly 1st grade to 3rd grade, so between the ages of 6 and 8. And in that time period, really the only things I was reading were Babysitter Club books and classics. Like, those were my 2 things. So I absolutely loved these. My personal favorite was Claudia. That's who I wanted to be. If I'm being totally honest, like, who I actually am is probably a combination of Christie with her like organization and type A bossiness, and Marianne with her like nerdiness. But I loved Claudia. I loved her artisticness and like her relationship with her grandma. And these are just like contemporaries, children's chapter books basically, and it's about the titular Babysitters Club. So it's a group of young women who form their own little business where they are babysitting for their small community in Connecticut, and it's just a great series. We've tried to get my older niece into them, and she's not taken the apple because I still have all of them at my mom's house. But we're gonna try again with my younger niece to see if she likes them. But I just remember absolutely loving these. And as I was mentioning earlier, that most of these either have a strong paranormal or a strong mystery component. I will tell you that my favorite books in that series were always the mystery specials. So they were like extra long, and those were always my favorites. So from the beginning, a lover of mystery, which segues nicely into the next series that I binge read, which was the Cat Who books. So these were by Lillian Jackson Braun. My grandmother gave me the first, I think 3 or 4 when I was about 8 or 9. and I just went on the full tear of all the ones that were available at the time. Lillian Jackson Braun started that series in the it's actually very interesting. She started it in the 60s and then re-picked it back up in the 80s. And I think it has to be like one of the only kind of surviving early cozy mystery series, because she would have been starting that series concurrently with when Agatha Christie was still writing like Miss Marple and Poirot. So I think that's just interesting, those earlier books, kind of contrasting them to some of the later Marple and Poirot books. But I think that she actually handles the kind of mood of the 60s a lot better in a cozy. And I will tell you that I personally vastly prefer the ones that are earlier in the series, kind of up through where the main character moves to a small town in, I think, like Minnesota. So if you don't know the kind of premise of this particular series, and like I said, I don't know how many there are, but there are well more than 10. There's got to be, I would guess, probably somewhere in the 30s of these books. But it's a dude who was a reporter who was sort of like Pulitzer Prize, like a really like well-known, respected reporter, but he was an alcoholic and his life kind of fell apart, and he's picking himself back up at a local paper in Chicago. So he's living in Chicago in the 60s, and on his first beat, so he gets sort of like the culture beat. His first beat is on modern art, and there is a murder, and he's like knew the victims and he's trying to figure it out. And in the course of investigating that murder, the victim had a Siamese cat who seems to be very preternaturally gifted at helping Quillerin, who is the main character, solve crimes. So from there, we have like a semi-psychic cat and a reporter guy who solve the crimes and the murders that come up on his beats as he's going along in the course of reporting. So the first few are definitely my favorite. I think my favorite one might be The Cat Who Ate Danish Modern. I really like The Cat Who Saw Red. Like all of those first few of them are just like, have reread easily 20 times. Like I wore those papers, they were so worn out, I literally had to recycle them because they were just completely destroyed. So I loved that series as a kid. If you're looking for a cozy series that's not like a classic one, though I guess it kind of is I don't know, it was an early one for sure. So that's my go-to on the cozy. But yeah, that was the second series that I can remember binge reading that was like a really long running one. Okay, and then the next one that I remember binge reading that was super long was Poirot. So I discovered Poirot. I discovered Agatha Christie in Heathrow Airport on my way back from studying abroad. When I was in university, I picked up The Hollow and Halloween Party. I was obsessed with them. I fell in love, and I just binged almost the entire Poirot series from there. I had been saving a couple of the ones that I knew were like lesser ones for a rainy day. And I ended up polishing that off, I guess, in 2018. I finished off that series entirely. This is my personal favorite one, which is Cards on the Table, but I talk about Agatha Christie on here all the time. I don't really feel like I need to give you the full pitch. If you're looking for classic, somewhat cozy, but really more just like golden age detective fiction, just really good episodic mysteries from the Queen of Crime herself, I of course recommend Poirot. But there are, I can't remember, I want to say like in the 30s, I think there's like 30 something Poirot books, so there's plenty for you to binge on if you get hooked on these. Okay, and then flash cut to when I was in grad school, so like let's call that my mid-20s. This was like a rich binge reading little run here. The first thing that happened was that I had read the first Sookie Stackhouse novel from Charlaine Harris when I was probably between undergrad and grad school, so like let's call that maybe when I was like in my early 20s, and I liked it, but I didn't love it, but it was very like, it was a very readable book. And there was a week in grad school where I was just sick as a dog. I have no idea what was going on, but I had like some sort of stomach thing. I wasn't eating much, and it was very weak. So in that week, I was trying to find something like just very light to read. And I remembered that I had, liked that first one pretty well. So I started reading them, and it wasn't that I really liked, like I have a weird relationship with the Sookie Stackhouse series because it's not that I particularly loved any of them, but just like, I just found them like I could not put them down. In the course of that 7 days, I binge read that entire series. I was reading like 2 books a day. And granted, I was sick, so I really couldn't focus on anything else and it was taking my mind off of things, but I binge read the whole series. I did skip a couple of books because upon doing research online, it became clear to me that towards the end things got bad, and I'm somebody who doesn't have a problem skipping some books. So I just sort of read some online summaries of those, cut to the final book, read the back half of the final book, and called it a day. But that one was definitely a very memorable binging experience that specific week. And I think enjoying sort of the like trashy quality or just like readable, bingeable quality of that paranormal mystery series opened me up to the idea of like, oh, I actually do like books that have a strong romantic element. It helped me really like connect that. So when I was just looking for something else light to read a couple of months later, online at the library, they recommended the Fool's Gold series by Susan Mallery, and they compared it to the Gilmore Girls. So I was like, you know, in those Sookie Stackhouse books, I liked that it was kind of like a small town or like a kind of recurring cast of characters. I love Gilmore Girls. And this has sort of opened me up to the idea that maybe I'd be okay with like just a straight up romance. So I decided to give it a try. And boy howdy, that was that summer before my last year of grad school. And that's what actually ended up interesting me in the romance genre. And that's why I ended up writing my thesis about romance novels, basically like the intersection between romance novels and religion, specifically like with evangelical romance novels. That was what a lot of my thesis was about. And then I was using Jane Eyre as a comparison in terms of like a book that is like very richly rooted in a specific type of Christian worldview and comparing. Anyway, but the binging of the Fool's Gold series from Susan Mallery is like really what opened me up to that specific thesis project, and therefore what like just sent me on an entire genre exploration. And that series is small town contemporary romance. They have pretty much the exact same formula in every single book. Different tropes, but the same like plot beat. So it's very reassuring, which is something that I like in a good binge. Honestly, in a binge read of a series, I tend to kind of like it when they're very similar. Like, I mean, I guess not always. It probably sort of depends on the type of book it is. But in that series, I really found the joy of like, oh, I really kind of know what's going to happen in every book, even though there's like slightly different types of characters and different types of like plot conventions around it, but there's these specific beats to the relationship that always happen. And that really helped me understand, like, I think that was the series, that and the Sookie Stackhouse series were the two that helped me understand how to read more commercial genre fiction in a way that I don't think I'd fully understood how to enjoy it before that. But those binges really helped me like understand the pleasures of just like, I know exactly what this is going to be and I know I'm going to like it and I'm just going to go all in. So then also around that time, I found 2 series. So first I think I probably started on this one first. So I found the Kate Daniel series, which again, I talk about all the time on this channel. So I don't really feel like I need to get into the full shebang, but I think I found this right when the 7th book had come out. Is that right? Like, what is the timing of this? 2007? Yeah, I think like this was probably, I think when I started on this series, it was right when that 7th book was coming out, which was Magic Breaks, which I, to this day, think is the best book in the series. And I didn't actually really love this first book, but then I happened to have read a novella to this series in a different collection. And I loved the novella, so it kind of made me reconsider this. So I started on that 2nd book and I just binged all the way through the 7th. I will say that this probably wasn't a pure binging scenario because then I had to wait in between, but I read all of the books that were available plus all of those novellas. And I remember that was sort of towards the very end of my time in Vancouver. So like, I think I'd wrapped up most of my work and was sort of waiting for my grades to come in. And that was when I like really went on a tear with this series. And I just fell in love with Ilona Andrews. I fell in love with this series and then was eagerly awaiting each of the following books. But by the end of this series, there were 10 of them. And then there's a bunch of accompanying novellas. So I feel like it barely squeaks into this list of ones that I would recommend binging on. This has strong fantasy, dystopia, future world, strong character work, a satisfying romance that goes over the course of the series. So it's not like a different couple in each book. It's like an overarching thing. And if you're not somebody who tends to love romance, I will say that I think that it has enough of that in the series that if that's what you're reading for, you'll be satisfied, but that's by no means the only thing going on in this series. So anyway, this was a very satisfying binge experience. And then when I got back from Vancouver and I was unemployed for I think about 3 months, and I was living with my parents, kind of applying for jobs, whatever, I binge read every single Psy-Changeling book that was available at that point, which I think there was about 14 of them at the time. There are now, I believe, 17, or I guess maybe 18, maybe there's 13, I don't remember, somewhere in the teens at the time. So I binge read all, like, I could not put these down. My parents were like making fun of me because I was like, okay, I've got a job interview at this time, and then I'm going to be reading this book for the rest of the day, so let me know if you need anything. But these books are just so satisfying. The overarching political machinations in these books I find really satisfying. This is my personal favorite one in the series. It's number, I think, 12, and this is the one that like really like brings a lot of things together, and there's a big reveal, and I absolutely love this book. But the whole thing is really satisfying, and I will tell you, I recommend this definitely as a series to binge on if you like paranormal romance that has like a real plot to it. That's kind of what I would say, of like if the main, like, you want the romance to be good, but you want there to actually be like real plot things happening, this is a great series. And I've had several people since I started this channel, well, I make it my business to like evangelize on behalf of Ilona Andrews and Agatha Christie. So obviously I get messages telling me like, oh, I finally started them, and I'm so glad that, you know, you recommended these two. I love them, and that always makes me happy. I say behind those two, this is probably the one I get the third most messages saying like, oh my gosh, I started that series and you're totally right, I can't put it down. I have turned, and in my real life, I've also turned several people onto this series. It's just very satisfying. I will tell you, there's also an Archangel series from Nalini Singh that is good. I don't personally like it nearly as much because I don't like the central couple as much as I like a lot of the ones in this world, but a lot of people prefer that series. It's the Guild Hunter series, I think is what it's called. So just FYI, if this one you like, you should also look into that other one because it is also very bingeable. And I think that there's probably more than 10 of them at this point. So it would also qualify for this list. And then aside from the In-Depth series, which I've obviously been working on for the last 2 years, that's the most recent series I've been having moments of binging on. I think before that, so like probably at the very beginning of my channel through like the first few little bit there, I was kind of tapering off that binge. I did binge read a lot of the Lynsay Sands Argeneau vampire series. Now, I will tell you at this point, because we are I think this series is now into the 20s, I have stopped reading those for the most part because I just didn't really like where the series was kind of going. But I think that if you start reading them and you like the formula of the book, there are well over 20 of them that I really enjoyed. And I could definitely recommend, just at least giving it a try if you like the formula. Like, you've got plenty of books to get through. So this is a concept where they're vampires, but I like it because it's not a magical version of vampirism. It's actually like rooted in science. So like the idea basically is, the backstory is that they are these vampires are the descendants of, and actually a couple of the older ones like actually came from Atlantis, and the Atlantean scientists had like developed essentially like nano blood technology that would like there are these little bots in your body, and they will like fix like your wounds or whatever, but they use blood as fuel, so you need to take in blood to be able to like feed those bots, and like they'd altered their DNA and whatever. So like it's an absurd premise, but I like it as a different take on a vampire lore where it is, I mean, like, is that actually possible in science? No, but the idea is that it's a less woo-woo explanation and a more scientific one. Lynsay Sands just has such a goofy, campy vibe to her books. Like they always have like a level of kind of humor and silliness to them that I really enjoy. And also they're set in Canada, so I used to live there. I appreciate that. But those books are super fun. I personally didn't love the first one, but I think the second one, which is called Love Bites, is where people should start. And it's just like a super fun, very enjoyable, very bingeable series if you like paranormal romances that always have like a mystery plot to them. Which again, at the beginning of this whole thing, I indicated that that tends to be something I really like in a binging series, is something that is mystery heavy, and then I tend to, for whatever reason, like kind of paranormal elements. I wonder if it's because it also, like, often paranormal books have a combination of romance and then like some sort of political machination, because I like both of those things, and the paranormal subgenre tends to have a lot of that, so I kind of wonder if maybe that's part of it. So there you go. That is a list of my recommendations of series that I have enjoyed binging on over the years that have like plenty for you to dive into. So not just like a 5 or 6 book run, but like at least 10 books for you to just like num on if you are just in the mood to binge on something. So yeah, that's some of my recommendations. Definitely let me know if you guys have long running, and I mean like at least 10 book series that you've enjoyed binging on over the years. There are plenty of them out there. So feel free to leave recommendations for that below in the comments. But yeah, I think that will do it for this video. So if you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, follow me on the social medias if you are so inclined. I have all of that information listed in the description box below, and I think that will do it. I hope you guys are having an absolutely lovely day, and I will just talk to you soon. Bye!